Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Arthritis at Home. Today, we have a special visit from a guest who has joined us on previous episodes of Arthritis at Home, and that's Dr. Jane Purvis. Dr. Purvis, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me back.
Dr. Purvis is one of the leading rheumatologists in Canada, so we're really lucky to have her with us today. She's a rheumatologist in Ontario, and she also is currently the Government Affairs Committee lead of the Ontario Rheumatologist Association. And today we're going to talk about COVID. Yes, just when we thought we were going to have a break, once again, COVID-19 seems to be everywhere, Dr. Purvis. And after the Omicron wave in the beginning of 2022, it seemed like we were all able to let our guards down a bit, that masks weren't being worn as much anymore, social distancing was being relaxed. We were going to be able to return to some sort of normal Canadian summer. But that's not the case. It's like a bad kind of horror movie. It's back. And what we thought in terms of, so many Canadians having the vaccinations or having the antibodies from a past infection, all that immunity hasn't really saved us from this next sub-variant. And once again, Dr. Purvis, Canadians are finding themselves feeling tired, exhausted, coughing, and seeing those dreaded 2 strips on their rapid antigen test. So here we are, and we're hearing about, and our patients are asking us about BA.5. What is it?
Well, it's Omicron again. So unlike previous waves back in 2021 that were different variants, this is a subvariant of Omicron. So unlike Delta, which was quite different than Omicron, this is just another Omicron. And there are other Omicrons on the horizon already after BA.5. So this is just more Omicron. The challenge is that this latest variation is even more infectious than the last one. And as many people have recently figured out, previous Omicron infection doesn't in any way prevent you from getting Omicron over and over and over again. Like all coronaviruses, which represent lots of things that cause the common cold, so far it doesn't seem to lead to lasting immunity.
There is a growing concern, and I don't know if we really have the data or evidence yet, but for our really high risk population in our world, the immunocompromised, the people living with an inflammatory arthritis, you talk about the reinfection. I think there's a real concern now about, is reinfection a potential risk for long-term health?
Well, long COVID is not well understood, but if you have long COVID and get reinfected, there's so far no reason to think that you're not going to get more long COVID from that. So people may in fact accumulate increasing damage with more infection. This is still something that people are only just starting to work on. So no one even really understands what long COVID is, but that is a concern. So getting infected many times may in fact lead to some permanent alterations that being reinfected, if you avoided reinfection, wouldn't have happened.
So you described BA.5 as being more transmissible. Do we know anything about severity yet?
I don't think that I've read anything that suggests that it's particularly more severe. Anytime something new comes along, people scramble to try and understand it. Certainly, it's a phenomenon that's being seen across the world right now with cases going up everywhere. When cases go up, and if everyone's got COVID, then the number of people who are hospitalized that have COVID is going to go up. The ICU numbers are edging up a little bit, but it hasn't been dramatic thus far. But it's still early days, so I would say that we all just have to wait and see, and and act accordingly.
So when we look at immunocompromised people in Canada, do we know how many are fully up to date with their COVID vaccinations?
Well, that's a great way to put it, because unfortunately, when we first got into this and people didn't understand how COVID vaccines were going to be, we unfortunately got into the terminology of fully vaccinated. And for the non-immunocompromised, that was felt to be 2 vaccinations. For the immunocompromised population, it was always felt that 3 vaccines were required to be fully vaccinated. But we now realize that with the way that COVID is changing itself and the way that the vaccines are losing their effectiveness after a period of time, that getting booster doses would be appropriate. So for people who are immunocompromised, an initial series of 3 doses, followed by another dose, and now followed by what would be a 5th dose is what's being recommended, with the idea that almost certainly there's going to be a different vaccine that's going to be specific for Omicron to a greater extent in the fall to give everybody a 6th dose. So rather than saying, I'm fully vaccinated, because this is a work in progress, all you can say is whether you're up to date or not. I have recent data from Ontario that shows that amongst the large group of people who are considered immunocompromised, which includes not only patients with rheumatological concerns, but also things like bone marrow transplants and that. And as I'm looking at the data here, it's around 75% of people have had 3 doses. So that means that 25% of the immunocompromised people in Ontario still even haven't had their 3rd dose. In terms of 4th doses, which in Ontario had been available for the patients immunocompromised who were 60 and over, until recently when it was now to everybody 18 and over, the numbers are more like 40%. So there's still a large group of people who, in the terminology of are your vaccinations up to date, are not up to date.
And your message to them would be?
Well, the message that the government of Ontario, as well as the NACI, the National Advisory Group on Vaccinations, have said for the general population who don't have other risks to themselves, that maybe 3 doses is sufficient, maybe 4 doses is fine. But for the patients who are immunocompromised, they are recommending that everybody get fully vaccinated, which would include the 4th dose now and 5th dose when you're able to get it. So there is no doubt that all of the agencies involved in this are recommending that immunocompromised people take advantage of every vaccine that they can get, including getting a vaccination now. When we're talking today, it's in July, understanding that there will be another dose in the fall, with the expectation that there may in fact be an even bigger peak of cases later on into December. So yes, I would say get vaccinated now. Getting vaccinated now will not preclude you from getting vaccinated again in the fall. And I don't think we're done. So there may well be further targeted vaccines coming out in the future, which may be recommended.
So I think a really important point that deserves repeating, because we are getting asked this all the time now, is that if I go get my 4th or 5th booster, will that put me at the back of the line? Am I going to have to wait longer in the fall for this targeted vaccination? And I think you've been very clear that it will not preclude you. So you should be getting that booster dose now, and it will not delay you getting the targeted vaccine when it's available. And I think, we've heard various dates, optimistically, I've heard September, I've heard October, I've heard November, I've heard the fall. Yep. We don't know when it's coming. And so you can't really base your decision now that you're going to be able to get it coming out of the summer.
And the critical thing to know is that the vaccine, when you take it, starts to work within 2 weeks, and then it's effective, particularly to prevent infection, for a number of weeks after that. And we're in the middle of a wave now. By the time September rolls around, this wave will likely be finished, and we're going to actually have a little pause in the action before the next wave starts. So getting a shot in September when things are quiet doesn't make as much sense as getting a shot now when things are really rolling at this point. I mean, and most people know someone who's got COVID. And at this point, a lot of people know people are having it the second time, including famous athletes and your next door neighbor. So it's a problem at this moment, and it needs to be dealt with now.
So with that kind of sobering reality, and for us to be ready and prepared that if we do get infected, what do you recommend our patients do?
Well, the important thing is to recognize that COVID infection can start in different ways, but it's usually like a bad cold or a flu with often fever, body aches, sore throat, stuffy nose, anything like that. And I recommend that everybody have a box of rapid test kit at home. And if you start having symptoms, you do a test. The important thing to also know is that an early infection or a mild infection often won't be positive on that rapid test for a while, sometimes days and days before it becomes positive. The reason that that's critical information is that there does exist medication called Paxlovid, pills that you can take that will prevent, hopefully, COVID from getting really bad and bringing you into the hospital. That medication is only effective if you take it within 5 days of the onset of symptoms. So if you get symptoms, and if you're an immunocompromised person who might be wanting to get Paxlovid, you've got to find out, am I positive? And if I am positive, I've got to contact someone who can prescribe this medication. I need to speak to my pharmacist to find out if I can take that medication. And I have to get all of that done while I'm not feeling well within the first 5 days of the infection. So if a rapid test is negative, you need to contact your healthcare provider in order to get a PCR test, which is positive early. So if it's positive, then you know you've got COVID. Your rapid test can be negative for days. But if your PCR is positive, then you are positive. And then the question is whether you want to access Paxlovid or not. But you in order to give yourself the option on that, you have to move quick.
And for inflammatory arthritis patients, if they do test positive, should they be contacting their rheumatologist?
Absolutely. So some of the medications that you're taking, you can easily hold while you're not feeling well anyways. Some of them you really should hold. Best thing to do is to speak to your prescriber. If you can't get a hold of your prescriber, your pharmacist can always give you information about what medications should be held and which ones can be continued. You don't want to stop prednisone abruptly in any situation because that will make you sick. But a lot of the other medications usually can be safely held, and some of them have to be held in order to help you get through the infection as best as possible.
And I think another clear message is, yes, we need to be reconsidering masking. We need to be thinking about ventilation and really thinking about social distancing. I know it's the summer and it's the time people want to get together, but certainly for immunocompromised, they should be, I think, extremely aware of their environment and take all the precautions necessary.
I would agree. And I would say that I hadn't stopped wearing masks, and I'm continuing to wear a mask in the office and outside of the office. And I'm also, aware of social distancing. One of the important things for us to still keep in mind, though, is if you've had all your vaccines, whatever that number is in your situation, the likelihood of you getting severely ill is considerably reduced compared to someone who's unvaccinated. So if we were to go to the hospital right now and look at the people who are in the hospital because of COVID, most of them are either people who've got lots of other health issues, or they're people who are unvaccinated or minimally vaccinated. 3 doses, particularly 4 doses, puts you in a situation where the likelihood of getting severely ill is dramatically reduced. But you still don't want to find out. You don't want to find out if you're still that person. If you can avoid getting sick, I still recommend that rather than finding out if you're going to be the person who gets really ill.
Dr. Purvis, thank you once again for joining us. And I think Your comments have been really, really valuable for our audience. And as you said, we're far from over here. We're looking at a wave now. And as you said, I think there's all predictions and experts are saying we need to be getting ready for the fall as well. So I don't want to predict this, but we will probably likely speak to you again in September, October. But hopefully people will be thinking about what they hear and have seen today. And if they want to get more information, we're going to provide links to all the provincial and territory health ministries who have great websites that you can get all the information in terms of your jurisdiction and what the guidelines are. Are there any other links that you want to share that we can possibly put at the end of the of this episode as well?
Well, I think a link to the National Advisory
Okay.
Committee on vaccinations. That's useful. A lot of these links are living documents, so they're updated frequently. And so that way, if you click on those, you're getting the latest information throughout the summer and into the fall, because there'll be changes for sure.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today on a summer episode of Arthritis at Home. And we hope you enjoy your day today and your week. And Dr. Purvis, once again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for asking me.